What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be going over one of the most confusing things about bass fishing is understanding the maps on your graph, what you're looking at, kind of how to read your contour maps, what everything means. I'm gonna go over a couple examples of places like points, ditches, channels. Just kind of all your stuff like that you're gonna need to be able to find and locate bass on your lake. And so this video is kind of just to help you guys out, and so you can really just kind of figure out your lakes better and just know where you're at a little bit and know what to look for and how to find some fish. Okay, so my first kind of talking point here, it's gonna be about on some graphs, like on mine, like we have the Garmin's, and so on my graphs there's depth shading for a certain depth. And so I'm on Truman Lake right now. Never fished here before, but it looked interesting on the map. And so I'm gonna kind of go over kind of what our depth shading on our graphs look like, and kind of how we have ours set up. So if you guys can see all right, if this looks all right, right up here you can see this red right on there. And that red, that's going to be super shallow. So you can see that's about 5 foot or less. 5 foot and less is all on that, all red. So, you can see kind of, the back ends of your creeks, or pockets or whatever. It's going to be really red a lot of times. And then kind of in that 5 to 10 foot range, that's going to be our orange. As you guys can see right up there, that's orange. And then after that, our yellow is like 10 to 15, I'm pretty sure. So we have ours set at. And then after that, it turns to green. Then after that, it obviously turns back to blue. And it's kind of blank here. That's like 20 to 30. And then this down here, that's like 30 to 40-ish, around there. And then obviously it gets dark out here in the main stuff, because that's like 70 foot. But so my next kind of point is gonna be talking about what different things on a map look like. Okay, after you guys have your depth shading all figured out, this is when you guys need to start looking at your map. And a lot of times whenever I'm practicing, I'll come out here like the night or like just sometime before I go, and I'll just look around on the map, especially if it's a lake I haven't been to before or haven't been to a lot. Like if I had to go like Lake the Ozarks or like Stockton, I haven't been there I've been there probably 10 times in my life. So I still don't have a whole lot of knowledge about the lake and kind of how it lays out. And so, like Truman, I've never fished here. This is my first time looking at the map of it. It looks like a lot of the points are decently flat. There's a lot of flats on this lake. It looks like a lot of channel swings. And so I'm kind of going to go over how you can kind of read your map and figure out where you should be fishing in a certain location. Okay, I hope you guys can see this well. But I'm kind of be going over examples of like some points and stuff like that. A couple places that are easy to understand on your map, especially when you have like the depth shading, like the Garmin's like this. The depth shading is really nice. So right here, this is just a perfect example of a little point. There are 2 pockets that split, and this is like the main point that would be splitting them. A lot of times, your fish may spawn back in here, or back in there, maybe back in there in that little cut right there, or even right in here. Okay, if you guys can see this well, right here's 2 little pockets that split, and right here, this right there is the main point that's connecting those 2 pockets. In the springtime, your fish may spawn back in here, right there, right there. Those kind of places that are protected by the wind, all that sort of stuff. So as it gets summertime, fish are gonna start moving out on these points. This right here, once you have your depth shading figured out, you can really pinpoint, especially if you start getting bit some, you can really pinpoint what depth shading you need to be keeping your boat in. I'd say for a place like Table Rock, in the summertime, for most scenarios, you need to keep your boat in about 30, maybe 35. It just kind of depends on what depth you're getting bit at. And so, if you're catching them up here in the green or up here in the yellow, you can keep your boat back in here. And just stay kind of a cast length away from your desired area. Maybe even a little closer, if you need to. But that'll kind of help you be the most efficient. And something else that's super hard to understand without good mapping or like a GPS or something is sometimes there's points, and based off the bank you would think they go one way, but in reality you're sitting in 100 foot of water. Like there's some places at Table Rock that are like that. Like you'll be sitting at what you think is the tip of the point, but you're sitting in the main channel. And those can be tricky to figure out without a good map. So I'm kind of gonna give you guys a couple examples of that. And I mean, kind of what to look for is those spots can sometimes hold the fishes there. Maybe not as looked at as much. Okay, I've got a pretty good example here that's on my graph right now that, you know, a lot of people may misconcept or not even look at, as they don't even realize what this is. And so if you were sitting, or if you were like fishing and you were just looking at the bank and you weren't looking at your map at all, you would think that this point probably ran out in this area. At least that's what I would think, is that's kind of where like the last bit of land is, so that's where you think the water would extend to. But in reality, you're kind of fishing in just kind of nothingness over here, in my opinion. But in actuality, there's kind of two little points that jut off right here. And so if you don't have a map, or you don't look at it, or you don't pay attention, you may not figure out, like you may be having your boat in 40 foot of water as you're casting up to the point you're like, why am I not getting bit? Well, probably because the fish are all sitting over here. And so that's kind of a good example of what some points are and kind of what a little bit of sneakier stuff might be, that you can maybe graph around, find a brush pile on, or, you know, just fishing, maybe find a little group of fish. Okay, with the new forward facing craze and the minnow and wintertime creek channel fishing, I'm kind of gonna give up some of my juice on what I look for in a certain creek, and what help me might narrow down, because finding good areas in the wintertime with a Damiki can be hard. As you might fish 80% of the creek and you miss the entire population of them. The winning fish might be in there. Or sometimes it's just a little easier to narrow down which creeks might have fish in them, which might. Okay, so I mean, you can kind of figure this out in practice, but places like this where like all you really have is just your creek channel coming back in here, and this kind of this little ditch over here, that one right there, places like that. Man, if you guys already know this, but I'm like, I might look here for a little bit, but I probably wouldn't stay as long. But if you come along, you can see the channel right up here. That's a little kind of blue highlight looking thing. You can see this channel swings in right here in this creek right here. This could be a great spot to find some. Absolutely great. It could be. Because what I kind of look for is where two channels intersect right here. Main channel right here. 70, 80 foot of depth right here. Creek channel right here. They intersect right at the mouth of each other. And that could be a very, very good place to start your day and look around, as that kind of seems to be like a high percentage area that them fish might suspend out and chase bait during the. Okay, one of my next little examples Some that I personally haven't really ever fished a lot, but I know some big events have been won down in my area on these types of areas, or groups of fish might congregate, you know, post spawn maybe, or during the summer. So right here on Truman, this is 2 islands right by the dam, and you can see it's the islands are kind of flat. Right in the middle, that's kind of known as a saddle. You think of like a saddle and like a horse. That's kind of what it looks like. As it gets deeper, as it goes in the middle, and then it comes back up on either side. And I think there might be an even better example of this kind of. I mean, that's a decent idea of it. But I personally haven't ever fished these, but I know like there have been BPT events won at Table Rock off saddles and stuff like that. And so these can be a great place to look. Probably a little sneakier area too. Everybody. Sometimes one of the biggest drivers of where fish might be right after they get done spawning or in the summertime months is if you have like a super rainy spring and your lake's pulling a lot of current, those fish are going to set up on the current swept points where they can sit on a side of the point and sit outside of the current, but the current's flowing over the point, and so they can just sit there and just gobble up whatever comes. A good example on this might be somewhere like this, as I don't remember which way current flows on Truman, if it either comes up through here and out this way or down like that. But this little runoff point right here, that might be a great area. If the current's going like this, then bass will sit right over on like this side of the point, right when they're outside of the current, and they'll sit there and gobble up whatever comes by, bait, bluegill, shad, whatever. Another great example would be this little point right here, this kind of hump looking thing, and as your current's flowing from either way, they're going to sit on the other side of that hump. So they'll either be sitting over here or over here most likely. And then they'll kind of use that as like where they can just be lazy and just sit there, but they're still going to be getting the sufficient. Somewhere that I've caught fish in the summer months that I don't know if it gets looked at as much as I think or not, but that's going to be kind of these ledges, as we don't have them like a place like the Tennessee River does. Like there's still some ledges and stuff, or you might find a little group of fish. And I've done this in the summertime at like Table Rock and places like that, and then kind of help you. Sometimes they're not always big, but you should always find some fish there. And if you find brush there, right here's a pretty good example of one. As you can see your main channel right here, it's kind of hard to see, but it runs up against this bank a little bit and then swings off. But this bank right here is all pretty much bluff, and as you can see, it's kind of flatter over here. And so this can be a really good area, as them fish will they have deep water access right next to them, which is something that's kind of big for fish. I don't really know why, but I mean it's nice for them. They can go out and suspend, go out and eat some bait if they wanted to, and then also just hunker down right here on this point. And if you can find like brush out in here too, that makes them spots a lot of times. That's gonna be it for my video today, guys. I really appreciate you watching, and I hope that I can help a couple of you guys out, kind of figure out, be able to break your lakes down a lot quicker, and you know, go find some, you know, tournament winning fish, go win some money. A huge shout out to everybody at American Bait Works. Halo rods, that's pretty much all I use. Like the Net Bait Rascal, probably might be the best jig trailer I've ever thrown, right next to that little pocket chunk, or like the mini Kickin' Bee or something like that. Them baits are amazing. And then, you know, the Redfin sunglasses, they're my favorite ones. Is like, they're not glass, and they're super affordable too. They're not glass, but it has a glass-like clarity, and so you're not going to get the worries of having a glass lens. You know, you can break them a lot easier, stuff like that, and you know, an affordable price point. So that's all I use, and I really appreciate you guys watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and go watch some of my other videos.